Hi, welcome to ECG Advanced Concepts video. ECG wave interpretation will be dealt in this video. So there are many basic concepts in ECG which I have dealt in my previous video. If you have not seen that video, please check in my YouTube channel and you can check the basic concepts of each of these ECG waves, and how to interpret these ECG waves is clearly dealt in that video. So let's move on to read the ECG by interpreting the advanced concepts in ECG waves. So first of all, let's see what is a regular sinus rhythm. So in a regular sinus rhythm, you can see the different waves like a P wave, a QRS complex, and a T wave. And there will be a isoelectric line, and again there will be a P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave. So this pattern will be repeating in a regular rhythm. So this is what we can see in a lead 2, and the heart rate will be at around 80 beats per minute. So in lead 2, we get an upright T wave and a narrow QRS complex. This is a feature of regular sinus rhythm, and the regular sinus rhythm is also called as a sinus rhythm or a regular sinus rhythm or a normal sinus rhythm. So the pattern is repeating P, QRS and T wave. It will repeat after a short isoelectric line. So this is how we can read a regular sinus rhythm. And the heart rate usually between 60 to 100 beats per minute, because the heartbeats are generated by the sinoatrial node. Next, we'll see the sinus bradycardia. Here again you can see a P wave, QRS complex and a T wave. And there will be isoelectric line, again a P wave, QRS complex and a T wave. So this pattern is repeating, and if you see the heart rate is lesser than 80, so it is 56 beats per minute, and the P wave is always upright in lead 2, and the QRS complex is narrow as usual in a sinus rhythm. The heart rate will be lesser than 60 beats per minute. And this kind of bradycardia is very common in athletes due to optimal stroke volume that requires less heart rate to yield acceptable cardiac output. Because of repeated exercise, the optimal cardiac output is yielded by lesser heart rate. Okay, as you know, the cardiac output is a product of stroke volume and heart rate. So next, the vagal stimulation and sick sinus syndrome can cause this kind of rhythm, sinus bradycardia. Next, we'll move on to the sinus tachycardia. Here again, when you look at the ECG, there is a P wave, upright QRS complex, and a T wave. All waves will be upright in lead 2, and the heart rate will be more than 100 beats per minute, that is 140 beats per minute. Okay, so the QRS complexes or the RR interval appears in a shorter duration in this case. Okay, and there will not be any missing waves. All the waves are clearly visible. So narrow QRS complex is a typical feature of sinus tachycardia, and the heart rate will lie between 100 to 150 beats per minute. And the cause for this kind of tachycardia is increased sympathetic stimulation, mainly because of pain or fever, or increased oxygen demand like mountain climbing, or hypovolemia because of low blood volume. So in such cases, sinus tachycardia is a common feature. So next we'll see the sinus arrhythmia. As the name suggests, it is a sinus rhythm but an arrhythmia. So sinus rhythm, there will be a normal P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave. Normal P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave. So each beats produces all these waves. Okay, so all the normal waves are seen, but the difference is here. If you look at the isoelectric line after the end of T wave and the beginning of P wave, the isoelectric line here it is same, but here it is bit lengthier. Okay, so that is arrhythmia. So the lead to upright P wave and narrow QRS complex is seen, and heart rate increases with inspiration and decreases with expiration. As you can see, the heart rate here shows an inspiration, whereas the heart rate here it is decreasing. Okay, these two heart rates are decreasing, so it shows an expiration. So it is very common in children, whereas in adults it is unusual. So this kind of rhythm is called as sinus arrhythmia. So the heart rate will be lesser than 80 beats per minute. Next we have a sinus exit block. Again, as the name suggests, it is a sinus rhythm. That's why we get a P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave, P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave, P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave. So that will be repeating. Okay, and there will be a sinus exit block. So if you can look at this wave and this wave, so then there will be a isoelectric line, okay, which is bit longer. So it shows there must be a P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave, which is missing here. Okay, so each pause is equal to a multiple of PP interval. PP interval is from the beginning of P wave to the beginning of P wave in another heartbeat. So this interval is called as PP interval. So the isoelectric line will be a multiple of PP interval. Next one, the cause for this kind of sinus exit block is usually blocked sinus impulses. Okay, the tissue around sinoatrial node is not carrying the impulses generated by SA node to depolarize the atria. So there will be a missing wave. Okay, a complete missing of PQRS and T wave is seen in this kind of block. So seriousness of this type of sinus exit block is related to the frequency and duration of the block. If there is more number of missing waves, there will be the higher chances of poor prognosis in the condition. So as well as if there is a higher duration in this isoelectric line, then again the prognosis will be poor. Next, we can see a sinus arrest. So sinus arrest, again, as the name suggests, a sinus rhythm will be seen. So there will be a P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave, P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave. Okay, then there is an arrest. There is no P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave. Again, it will reappear after some time. So in lead 2, we can see a sinus arrest or a sinus pause. Okay, so the heart rate will be less than 50 beats per minute, and each pause is not equal to the multiple of PP interval. If you can calculate here, the PP interval 10 big squares and 4 small squares, in this case PP interval, and here the PP interval is 3 big squares and 3 small squares. Okay, so it is not a multiple of 1 or a 2, so the PP interval is not directly correlated with the PP interval at this part. So this is clearly showing a sinus arrest. Okay, there will be missing of 2 or more PQRST waves. Okay, Next one cause is sinoatrial node fails to fire impulses and the AV junction takes the control of the heart in this case. And seriousness is again related to the frequency of appearance of these missing waves and the duration of the PP intervals. As the duration increases, the prognosis of the condition decreases. Next, normal sinus rhythm with premature atrial complexes. So this is normal sinus rhythm with premature atrial complexes. So here we have a P wave, QRS complex and a T wave. P wave, QRS complex and a T wave. P wave, QRS complex and a T wave. So it is normal sinus rhythm with PAC, premature atrial complexes. So we have something called as a QRS complex here. So if you can see here, there is a small duplicate of a complex like a QRS complex, but it is not a QRS complex. You can see the same thing appearing after some few heartbeats. So it is called as premature atrial complexes. And in lead 2, you can see a flattened, notched, peaked or biphasic P waves. Okay, so this is a P wave, flattened, notched and biphasic, and this is a biphasic P wave. So it looks like a complex. Okay, so it will be either flat, notched or peaked and biphasic, and the QRS complex will be always narrow. Okay, QRS complex will be narrow in this case. So in a ECG, if you can see some waves like this, it clearly suggests premature atrial complexes. Usually it appears on the P wave only. Okay, and the cause for such kind of waves is irritability to the atria results in increased automaticity of atrial tissue. So the atrial irritation will fire extra impulses from the SA node. That is why the atrial impulses are overlapping. That is why we can see a complex. Atria initiates an impulse before SA node fires. That is why the premature atrial complexes are seen. So the heart rate will be less than 80 beats per minute in this case. Next, we can see an atrial tachycardia. Next, we can see atrial tachycardia. As the name suggests, it is a tachycardia. Tachycardia means heart rate will be more than 100 beats per minute. And here you can see the P wave, QRS complex and a T wave. Okay, but these all waves appears at a very short duration, that is less than 0.2 seconds. Okay, within one big square, okay, these complexes will appear. Okay, as you can calculate, it is appearing at a very short duration. Okay, so the leads will be, or the waves will be regular, rapid and narrow QRS pattern is seen. Okay, it looks like all the needles have kept upright. Okay, so this is a typical feature of atrial tachycardia. The heart rate will be more than 170, but and between 230 beats per minute. Okay, the heart rate will be very high. In case of sinus tachycardia, heart rate goes up to 150 beats per minute. But if it is more than 150, that is 170 to 230, then it is atrial tachycardia. Then at rest, heart rate will be over 150 beats per minute. As I said, in sinus tachycardia, it may go up to 150, but in atrial tachycardia, heart rate will be more than 150 beats per minute, even at rest. Then we have an atrial fibrillation. As the name suggests, it is an atrial fibrillation. The atrial waves will be replaced by the fibrillatory waves. Okay, here you cannot see a P wave, the atrial wave. Okay, but the QRS wave, ventricular wave, is seen, and a ventricular repolarization is seen. The T wave is distinct and the QRS waves are distinct. Okay, but not the P wave. So it is P waves are replaced by a fibrillatory wave. So the in lead 2 we can see a chaotic rhythm pattern, absent P wave, and recognizable QRS complex is very common in case of atrial fibrillation. And the chaotic baseline rhythm or fibrillatory waves are hallmark of this kind of atrial fibrillation. Okay, so this is a hallmark wave of atrial fibrillation. The atrial waves are replaced by fibrillatory waves. Okay, here atrial kick is lost and high risk for thrombus formation after 48 hours. Okay, the atrial waves are lost. Okay, the atrium will not depolarize and repolarize properly. It will continuously contract and relax. Okay, so this continuous contraction and relaxation causes the blood in the atrium to clot. Okay, and there will be a thrombus formation. Okay, and this kind of thrombus formation usually occurs after 48 hours if the atrial fibrillation are not corrected within that time duration. So this is a dangerous condition if it is not treated within 48 hours. Next, you can see an atrial flutter. Atrial flutter, here you can see the waves. We cannot distinct whether it is, okay, I can say, so here it is a P wave, QRS complex, T wave. Then we don't know what wave it is. Again, a P wave, QRS complex, T wave. So in general, when you look at this, it reminds you of a saw blade. Okay, saw blade appearance or the sawtooth appearance of the waves is a hallmark of atrial flutter. Okay, and the heart rate may go up to 250 to 350 beats per minute in this case. And the sawtooth baseline pattern is a hallmark of this condition. And the main cause for such a kind of waves are development of a re-entry circuit within the atria, generating a loop that discharges impulses. Okay, so here a loop will be formed. Okay, so before the atrial depolarization, there will be another wave causing an extra wave, an extra P wave, or we cannot name it as a P wave. Okay, because this is an extra wave. Okay, which is seen as a sawtooth appearance in the ECG. So this is called as atrial flutter. Next, we have a Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. So Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, here again we can see a P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave. P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave. But if you look closely, the QRS complex, okay, there is a QRS complex which is slightly deviating, and then there is a starting of a QRS complex. Okay, so this part, okay, is not similar to other waves. Okay, so this kind of waves are called as delta waves. Okay, so there will be a short PR interval. The P and R interval will be very short. Okay, you cannot see a clear identical isoelectric line. It will be very short, maybe one small square. Okay, with the delta wave. Okay, it actually looks like the QRS complex starts from here and the isoelectric line is going upwards. Okay, So actually it should be P wave, then QRS complex and T wave. Okay, but here in the delta wave is overlapping. So P wave, then it goes QRS complex and a T wave. Okay, this delta wave is seen in this case. So delta wave is the slurring of the beginning of the QRS complex. Okay, as I shown in this arrow. So delta wave is the slurring of the beginning of the QRS complex. And the cause for this kind of waves, the Wolff-Parkinson-White Syndrome, is pre-excitation of the ventricles enabled by an accessory pathway, that is bundle of Kent that connects the atria to the ventricles before being met by the normal depolarization of the ventricles from the bundle branches. So it is pre-excitation which causes the delta wave in this case. Okay, pre-excitation of the ventricles. Usually excitation of the ventricles is caused from the AV node, so that will cause a regular QRS complex, but here the bundle of Kent accessory pathway that connects the atria and ventricles, it excites before the AV nodes are exciting the uh, ventricles. That's why we get a delta wave. Next, we have normal sinus rhythm with first degree AV block. So as the name suggests, there will be P wave, isoelectric line, QRS complex, isoelectric line, and a T wave. Okay, normal sinus rhythm with first degree AV block. So what is first degree AV block? So the PR interval is more than 0.2 seconds. So PR interval will be more than 0.2 seconds from the beginning of P wave to the beginning of QRS complex. This duration will be more than 0.2 seconds. 0.2 seconds equals to one big square, or more than equal to 5 small squares. So here if you calculate, it will be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 small squares. So it is more than 0.2. Okay, so the PR interval is longer than 0.2, suggest a first degree AV block. So the cause for this kind of first degree AV block is prolonged transmission of an impulse through the junctional area, the AV node and the bundle of His. So from the SA node to the AV node, okay, the atrial depolarization will take place. After that, for the ventricular depolarization, it takes a longer duration or the longer time. Okay, so that is what called as the first degree atrioventricular block. Okay, here the junctional area will not catch the impulses very fast. Next, we have a second degree AV block type 1, or it is also called as Mobitz type 1. Okay, here we have a P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave. Okay, and a P wave, QRS complex, and this is a PR interval. Okay, so here you can see the PR interval is getting bit lengthier than the previous PR interval, and here it is shorter than the previous PR interval. Okay, so it is Mobitz type 1 or Wenckebach's type 1. Here lengthening of PR interval followed by a dropped QRS is a typical feature. As I said before, there is a lengthening of PR interval. Here it was around 8 small squares, and here it increased more than 8, and after that here there is no R interval to calculate. So there is a total missing of a QRS complex. Okay, there is a total missing of a QRS complex. So this indicates a second degree AV block type 1. Okay, Mobitz type 1. So the cause is enhanced vagal tone, and myocardial infarction. And drugs such as calcium channel blockers, digitalis, and beta blockers can occasionally cause this kind of heart block, second degree heart block, Morbid's type 1. The typical feature is lengthening of PR interval and missing of a complete heart wave, okay, ventricular wave. Next we have a second degree AV block type 2, okay. Here you can see the QRS complex appearing like the letter M, okay. So second degree AV block type 2 or Morbid's type 2, okay. Here one or more QRS complexes are dropped with PR intervals remaining equal, okay. The PR intervals will be equal, okay, but there is one missing QRS complex, and here again a P wave, and again second QRS complex is missing. So one or more QRS complexes are missing in this case, so that is called as second degree AV block type 2, but the PR interval will be equal. If you, I don't have another reading of PR interval, so here the PR interval will be equal, okay. So low cardiac output is likes with the multiple dropped QRS complexes. So if there is more than one or two QRS complexes are missing, the cardiac output will significantly drop, and this rhythm can progress to complete heart block. This missing rhythm, missing ventricular beats, will progress to complete heart block. Okay, next we see the complete heart block, third degree AV block. Okay, here the third degree AV block or the complete heart block, regular RR intervals and chaotic PR intervals are seen. So the RR intervals will be regular, okay, it looks like equidistanced, and the PR intervals may be varied. So we cannot make out where is the PR interval. So it looks like the QRS complex and T wave, and the P wave is overlapping with the QRS in this case. Okay, so the PR interval is not actually, this is a bigger P wave, okay, which is overlapped with the QRS complex. Okay, so the PR interval cannot be calculated properly, okay. So a narrow QRS denotes a higher block, while a wider QRS denotes a block in the bundle branches. The wide QRS indicates block in the bundle branches, whereas a narrow QRS indicates block in the sinoatrial node or AV node itself. Next we have to look why we have to take care of such rhythm. So there will be low cardiac output, and this kind of rhythm may progress to a asystole or other fatal dysrhythmias. Okay, if we do not take care, give the proper medication, it will immediately move on to an asystole. Next we have a premature junctional complexes. So premature junctional complexes, as the name suggests, there will be some complexes can be seen. So this will be an absent or inverted P wave. Okay, here you can see an inverted P wave. Okay, and in all the cases here in this ECG we have a P wave. Okay, but there is an inverted P wave is a feature in this ECG. Okay, sometimes this P wave will be missing, and PR interval is less than 0.12 seconds. Here the P wave is seen and the R wave. So it is appearing, I think, within one small box, which equals to 0.04 second. So the PR interval will be less than 0.12 second. Very rapid PR interval is seen here. And the QRS complexes occur early or premature. Okay, in this case actually after a P wave, okay, immediately QRS complex occurs. Okay, there is no proper isoelectric line, so the time taken by the electrical waves to move from SA node to AV node is very rapid. That's why immediately after the atrial contraction or the atrial depolarization, there will be a ventricular depolarization or contraction. Okay, so the irritable focus within the AV junction is the cause for this kind of rhythm. So this is what called as premature junctional complex. Next, we can see a junctional rhythm. Okay, a junction rhythm or junctional escape rhythm. So occurs from AV junction, AV node, and bundle of His. Okay, it occurs from AV node, AV junction, AV node, and bundle of His. Okay, the junctional rhythm, as the name suggests, it is not a sinus rhythm. It is a junctional rhythm. So the sinus wave is missing always. The P waves are missing in this case. Okay, P waves are missing in junctional rhythm. Inverted or absent P waves and narrow QRS complex is a feature of this kind of waves. Okay, and the heart rate 40 to 60 beats per minute is common in junctional rhythm. The AV junction usually produces a heart rate of 40 to 60 beats per minute. We have a wandering pacemaker. Wandering pacemaker, here the pacemaker is uncertain. Okay, so the fluctuating site of impulse formation usually between the SA node and AV node or AV junction. Okay, so here either we can have a impulse or generated from the SA node which travels to the AV node, okay, causing a complete normal rhythm, P wave, QRS complex, and a T wave, or sometimes it may be pre-excited. Okay, the P wave will be inverted, QRS will be normal, and T wave will be normal. Okay, so this is because of ventricular or the AV junction is causing the heart rate. Okay, P wave changes that switch between upright P waves and absent or inverted P wave. So here also you can see an upright P wave, here also upright P wave, but here when it comes it became inverted P wave. Okay, sometimes even it may be absent, there will not be any P wave. And narrow QRS with heart rate around 60 beats per minute is seen. Okay, because both SA node and AV node works, but they are not working properly. Okay, sometimes SA node fires the impulses, sometimes AV junction fires the impulses. Accelerated junctional rhythm. So accelerated junctional rhythm, here again the rhythm is from the junction, but it isn't at an accelerated rate. So the heart rate will be 60 to 100 beats per minute. Usually the junctional rhythm will be between 40 to 60 beats per minute, but since it is more than 60 beats per minute, it is called as accelerated junctional rhythm. So there will be an inverted or absent P wave. So in this case, you can see all the inverted P waves. Okay. And shortened PR interval. PR interval will be less than 0.12 second. That is less than 3 small squares. Okay. In all the cases, the PR interval is just 0.04 second, one small square. and the narrow QRS complexes are seen. And the cause is enhanced automaticity, increased sympathetic activity due to catecholamines, or hypoxia is the cause for such kind of rhythm. Okay, so enhanced automaticity usually occurs because the junctional rhythm or the ventricular rhythm takes accelerated, or the repeated impulses passing through the junction causes this kind of accelerated junction rhythm. So after one ventricular contraction, it will overlap with the next ventricular or the atrium contraction. Okay, that's why we get a accelerated rhythm. Next we have junctional tachycardia. So in case of junctional tachycardia, again it is generated by the junction. Okay, so the P waves will be inverted and the heart rate will go above 100 beats per minute. Okay, so if it is less than 100 beats per minute, we call it as accelerated junctional rhythm. Since it is more than 100 beats per minute, we call it as a junctional tachycardia. So in lead 2, inverted or absent P waves can be seen. Okay, similar to the previous wave, but the heart rate will be more than 100 beats per minute, though, and the P waves are inverted or maybe absent, and the PR intervals again shortened. Okay, it will be less than 0.12 second, and the QRS complexes are always narrow. The cause for such kind of rhythm is enhanced automaticity. Okay, here the impulses reappear and overlap with the atrial impulses very fast. Okay, the impulses are generated by the ventricles, that's why the ventricular rhythm appears faster, and there will be increased sympathetic activity, or hypoxia is a cause. Okay, causes are similar, but the heart rate is the only factor which is more than 100 beats per minute in case of junctional tachycardia, whereas in case of accelerated junction rhythm it is 60 to 100 beats per minute. Next we have PVC, or premature ventricular contractions or complexes. Okay, premature ventricular complexes, okay, the ventricular complexes occurs before the expected time. Okay, represents increased ventricular automaticity and or re-entry phenomena. Okay, here you can see a P wave QRS complex and a T wave, P wave QRS complex and a T wave, and then there is no P wave, no distinct QRS complex, and the T wave also cannot be um, identified separately. So there is a vague kind of rhythm. Okay, so this is called as premature ventricular complex. So T wave point in an opposite direction from the QRS complex. Okay, usually T wave will be upright, but here it is pointed towards downwards. Okay, so the premature ventricular complex arrives earlier than expected and usually wide, 0.12 second or more, and bizarre. This is a bizarre wave, and the duration is more than 0.12 seconds. Okay, or maybe equal to 0.12 second. Then we say two phenomena. One is bigeminy. Bigeminy is a premature ventricular complex which occurs after every second QRS complex. Okay, after every second, 1, 2 QRS complex, then we get a premature ventricular complex. Then we call it as a bigeminy. If it is appearing after 3 normal QRS complexes, then it is called as a trigeminy. This ECG shows a trigeminy. Okay, so PVC occurs after a third complex. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, after third complex there is a premature premature ventricular complex. Next we have idioventricular rhythm. So idioventricular rhythm, here you cannot see a P wave or a T wave properly. A T wave will be inverted and QRS complex, and a T inverted T wave is seen. Okay, IVR occurs when the SA node and AV nodes uh, either not firing or firing slower than ventricular pacemaker rate. Okay, so SA node and AV nodes are either not firing or firing slower than ventricular pacemaker rate. Then it will be called as IVR or idioventricular rhythm, and the heart rate will be 20 to 40 beats per minute. Leads to poor cardiac output, and this leads to poor cardiac output. Accelerated idioventricular rhythm. Accelerated idioventricular rhythm, again the rhythm will be more than 40 beats per minute. That's why it is called as accelerated idioventricular rhythm. Okay, the rhythm will be similar to the previous rhythm, idioventricular rhythm, but here it is at accelerated rate. Okay, heart rate between 40 to 100 beats per minute. And AIVR is an unstable rhythm which move quickly to either asystole or ventricular tachycardia. And the cause for this kind of rhythm is increased ventricular firing due to hypoxia or abundant sympathetic stimulation. Next we have a VT or ventricular tachycardia. Only QRS complexes are repeatedly occurring in this kind of waves. Okay, so ventricular tachycardia uh, produces low cardiac output and changes to ventricular fibrillation very easily. Okay, the main cause for ventricular tachycardia are mainly the myocardial infarction or R on T phenomenon, or the PVC landing on T wave. That is another reason. Then cardiac drug toxicity and electrolyte imbalances usually causes ventricular tachycardia. Then we have ventricular fibrillation. So ventricular fibrillation, again a fibrillatory waves can be seen. Okay, and the QRS, but atrial fibrillation we can see the QRS complexes are distinct, but here the QRS complexes appears like fibrillatory waves. Even P waves cannot be identified properly. So it is called as ventricular fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation, we cannot identify only the P wave, but QRS complexes will be distinct. And this kind of ventricular fibrillation may not produce any kind of heart rate. Okay. Ventricular fibrillation originates in the ventricles, resulting in no cardiac output. And codes ventricular fibrillation amplitude 3 mm or more. Okay, so the height of the waves will be 3 mm or more. Okay, fine ventricular fibrillation amplitude less than 3 mm. Okay, this is coarse ventricular fibrillation. Okay, but there may be some fine ventricular fibrillation. Okay, this is an example of coarse ventricular fibrillation, whereas we have fine ventricular fibrillation. The fibrillatory waves may not go above 3 small boxes. Okay, so that kind of rhythm, this kind of rhythm is called as fine ventricular fibrillation. And at last we have an asystole. Asystole, there will not be heart rate and no cardiac output, and the waves will just fluctuate or just move in a straight line, either an isoelectric line or just show minute fluctuation. Okay, so it is an end stage rhythm and rarely occurs due to excessive vagal tone and response to vagolytics such as atropine and transcutaneous pacing. And check pulse and lead connections before confirming asystole. Sometimes uh, when you check the pulse will be present, but the ECG shows an asystole, then there is higher chances that the ECG are misconnected or some of the leads are not properly connected to the chest. So before declaring someone as a dead, we have to check the pulse in order to confirm the proper functionality of the ECG machine. Okay, and all the leads are properly connected. Okay, so thank you for watching my video. If you did not subscribe to my channel, please go ahead and subscribe to watch more videos. Thank you.